Hello and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Lauren Rowe. I'm Trisha, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. Currently, I'm privileged to work on the KDP University team, helping authors use the KDP website to make the most of their author journey. Well, enough about me. We're here to talk to Lauren. Lauren Rowe is a USA Today and international best-selling author of contemporary romance novels that make readers laugh, swoon, fan themselves, and cry through their humor, heat, and heart. Besides writing novels, Lauren is an audiobook narrator, award-winning songwriter, and the singer of a popular wedding band in her hometown of San Diego, California. She loves incorporating original music into her books, and Rowe believes that writing a book is like creating a sandcastle, where the first draft is simply getting all your sand into the box, and only once that's done, the real work of revising, editing, getting feedback to perfect the book, and building the sandcastle can begin. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and hello, everybody.
Well, we're definitely thrilled to have you here. I don't know how that introduction, good gracious, where do you find time to do everything? Musician, writer, so much.
Well, when you're like bursting at the seams with excitement and passion, it's not finding time, you know what I mean? It's trying to remember to breathe, eat, sleep, drink water. So I have to find time to function as a human.
If you're like me, there are some days where all of a sudden you're like into whatever it is and you forget to do anything. Like, oh, it's 5 o'clock and I haven't eaten breakfast, lunch, you know?
That is my biggest problem. My family knows this about me, and they'll literally knock on my office door and say, "Have you had anything to eat today?" No. Okay, I'm gonna make you a sandwich. They're really sweet about it. And that's actually my first go-to pointer for any new or aspiring writer. It's silly, but I'm like, never allow yourself to sit down, literally never, unless you have a big water bottle. So that's point number one.
Definitely stay hydrated. So musician, in a band, a singer in a band, and then you take that other passion that you have and you incorporate it into your novels.
Right, when appropriate. So at the moment, and for a while now, I've been in a little corner of my universe, which is a record label. So I did the record mogul, and I've been doing various artists. And when appropriate, if the characters write a song, then I write that song, produce it, and then in the ebook it says click here to hear the song, and then it's hidden in my website on a page so that if you click the link, now you're listening to the song. So
Wow.
in these last books I've written, for instance, I think there were 6 original songs because it's over 2 books, and people just love it. It's a big commitment, but I love doing it, and then it's another way to continue to tell the story and layer out my characters. You can hear artists and musicians, they can speak in words, yes, but it's when they tell you something in a song that you really, really get to hear their heart. So
Right. So with that, do you sometimes write the songs first and then write the story to go around it, or is it ever the other way, or is it which way does that go?
I've never written the song first because I am much more of a pantser than an outliner and a plotter. But once I have my characters going and I kind of can see a little bit ahead, I stop and write whatever important song, because the songs are plot points, what's in the lyrics. So for instance, in my last song, the guy and his band, he writes this lyric. It's very simplistic. You're not going to be impressed, but it's la 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 la. And then half the band sings la la, and he's singing hidden in the mix, Layla, which is her name. So then there's this whole plot that unfolds when she gets an early copy of the album through the label without him knowing, and she hears her own name. There's a whole plot of him denying, I'm not singing Layla, that's Lala. And she's like, what do you think, I'm stupid? I hear it. You've buried it in the mix, but you're singing Lala. And he's like, no, I mean Layla. And he's like, no, it's Lala. So of course I needed that song in order to then write the next 100,000 words. So to answer your question, I stop and I write that song the minute it comes to me, but it's usually not literally at the beginning.
Okay. So you're a pantser, and let's talk about what a pantser is. That's somebody who kind of sits down and just starts writing.
Correct. I would not say that I literally write with a blank mind. I usually have a semblance of what I want to achieve. I know something that happens in the middle. I know I have to know who my characters are. And then I just write a rough outline of what I know. And then I sit down and I start going. And more often than not, I start veering from whatever rough outline I had. And then somewhere along the way, I loop back to that scene I knew was going to happen in the middle, and off I go again. And then usually for the last 25% of the story, I have now outlined it fully. Once I get to 25% left to go, 30% left to go, I know what I'm doing. But there's a lot of twists and turns that happen before that point.
So how much rework is necessary at that point to do all the editing if it's a rough outline? Or
Well, thank goodness for computers. I don't know how people wrote on typewriters. Honestly, how did they do that? Because I have had, it varies is the answer to your question, short answer. But the long answer is whether, I have to rewrite and redo constantly. Because even if you're an outliner, in my belief, from talking to my friends, as you continue to write your book, you get to know your characters better. Then when you go back to page one, you see them speaking in a manner or whatever you've described. It just doesn't fit their personality as well as toward the end of the book when you know them better. So rewriting and editing is every author's great friend. And also, if you just go, you can go have an aha moment at 60% in your manuscript and say, oh, I know how to foreshadow that. Oh, I know how to, make that a twist. If I just go back and do a red herring over here, and then you go back and, you keep inserting and taking out and rearranging. And I cannot tell you how many times I've started writing a book and then realized I had started what I thought was chapter 1 really is chapter 10, that really I needed to backfill all these things that had happened in flashback or had been referenced but really not shown. And I realized, I have to show this, not tell it. I go back and write literally 10, 15 chapters before what I thought was chapter 1. It's a very fluid process, and it's really a matter of giving yourself permission to just unleash your imagination and have faith that, yes, it's a computer. That means you can change things anytime. So just go, go, go. I once had a novel that I wrote in chronological order until I realized it would be better to tell in this really wacky order where it was a mystery, where you're putting things together and it's not told to you in linear time. So I literally had to reshuffle the deck and reorder the chapters and tell things in this really weird order. And I loved it. But I wrote it in linear fashion.
So what do you use a specific software that helps you do that? I think some people prefer a software, or they just write in Word and then cut and paste and everything, or there's other stuff. What do you prefer?
Well, I am just a dinosaur. I've tried various things and I always go back to just writing in Word. I'm most comfortable with it. I know the commands the best, and then I don't have to learn anything. And learning something in addition to trying to let my imagination go, I've learned is a stumbling block for me. So I just use Word. I was a lawyer for 13 years writing briefs in Word, and so it just comes more naturally to me.
So what made you shift? Taking a law career and then all of a sudden becoming a writer. That's a bit of it's not a huge leap, because in legal you write a lot. It's just a different way of writing.
True. Well, I know this is probably a common story for any other writer that's out there, or for some. But as a kid, I would write novels constantly, and those journals that are meant to be almost like a diary. And I would write them in pencil, and these things were 100 pages, and I wrote 10 of them. And then I was in undergraduate. I was in theater and film, and I wrote plays, and they were produced at my school, and screenplays. So I was writing. But then I got really scared of being a creative for a living. I come from a very traditional family with lots of lawyers, and so after school, I went to law school. And that just I was on a sled going down a hill. It just led to me being part of this firm, and off I went without really taking control of my life or thinking who I was and who I wanted to be. So yes, then I was a lawyer, but I was a trial lawyer. So I was writing a lot of briefs, but I was also speaking and telling a story, so to speak. I was getting all the facts assimilated and assembled, and then explaining the story in a way that could be easily digestible. So I think that was an incredible training ground. And then what happened, and I always tell people, don't wait for this, is I got diagnosed with cancer. This was like 10 years ago, more now, 11. And I realized, as many people do when they have a life-altering diagnosis like that, look, I'm not going to live forever. What am I doing? I don't even like being a lawyer. So I wrote my first book, which was a memoir, and it was about my cancer journey. I had it traditionally published. I had my agent. It was published. It was great. I got what was considered a great advance. I was very proud of that. But I quickly realized that I didn't want to continue writing memoirs or nonfiction, that my heart was in fiction. So I changed my name to Lauren Rowe. And to my shock, I mean, I could make more money in a day when my book hit as a hit. It was so much more money than this advance that was pretty great in the traditional world. And off I went. I haven't looked back.
So do you now, are you all indie pub, or do you traditionally publish still?
I am 90% indie pub, and the only exception being I did write a small series for a very small press who attracts a lot of indie authors who are just looking to diversify for marketing purposes. So it's all indie. It's really all indie, but I do have a very small press for a few books. But yeah, I'm all in, and I love it. Love it.
What do you love? So why? You know, there are some authors that absolutely love traditional, and they're publishing indie until they can go to traditional. But you're like, nope, I'm hook, line, sinker, indie. Why?
Well, I'm a rare bird in that I had traditional first. I'm not trying to get into traditional. I literally stepped away from traditional. And it's very plain for me that the control over my work, my schedule, my destiny, the rapid rate I can get my books out to the world. I love just having the control over my own work completely. I still put out a top-notch product. And, you know, my books, as you know, are sitting on the shelf, the virtual shelf, next to whatever traditional author you want to pick. So the consumer doesn't know the difference. By and large, they don't know the difference. Like I say, I put out quality work, and I absolutely love it. I also love the ability, I saw this in the pre-package that you showed, and I thought, oh, that's so true. I have had, you know, some small criticism in a review, let's say, in the early days that comes up, and I think, but then it comes up again in another review, and I think, oh, okay, then they're onto something there. And I'll go in and just change a word that they felt was like too harsh, or they didn't like this moment, and I look at it and I go, all I have to do is add like 2 sentences and that'll fix that. So I don't do it often, but occasionally I can go into my work that is sitting on the market and I can change something. As an example, 5 years ago, I put out a book. The guy became viral on Vine. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So I went in and changed it to another name.
Yep. Yeah. So updating
so one
with
platform
technology
doesn't exist, and now you can update with technology or whatever. So I changed it to another name, and there you go. Now it's current.
Yeah, without having to go through republishing and finding your backlist. It makes it much easier for people to read your backlist and make it relevant.
Oh, speaking of which, you need to, as an author, I really want to put this out there, you not only need to have a complete backlist, you need to update that backlist. Well, on a traditionally published book, you cannot do that. It's printed and it's out there, and it's not going to be changed. But for me, every new release I have, I can shift the order of what's in that backlist. I can highlight the new release that's coming. I can funnel people into a pre-order. And, you know, that's how you keep your backlist going. That's how you keep bringing in money when you're still sitting there writing for months.
Let's talk about your back matter in your book, because to your point, you do point, you make sure to update that, and you include the new releases in your back matter so people can see your entire list, because you might get somebody who's never read you before start reading one of the backlist novels and then get into the newer novels. So how do you format that? What does that look like? Your back matter where you have that?
Well, I mean, yeah, you get to the end of the book and then it says, well, see, I have a very interesting, weird thing in that I write mostly in one large universe. And as I mentioned in the beginning, one corner of the universe deals with the record label. Another corner of the universe deals with this family over here, the brothers, and they all cross-pollinate. So a lot of times a character will have been mentioned in this book, but they have their own book over here. So as an example, you get to the end of this book and it'll say, are you interested to find out more about Colby? Are you interested to find out more about Dax Morgan and his band, 22 Goats? And so then click, here it is, there's the link. Maybe it'll be a one sentence, just something that teases and lets the person say, oh, what is this? Is this for me? And then they click. Well, I may put out another book where, let's say, a new character is more heavily discussed, is a best friend. Well, if that person has a book now, I'm going to put them at the front of that book. So each book may have different back matter that it's teasing as at front, just because whoever read that book is going to have a different interest depending on what they just read. And all I'm trying to do is funnel people into my world, because just for my world, I have so many cross-pollinating books that I have a very high retention rate. If someone reads one book of mine, they don't always love it. So bye, I'm sorry, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for reading, bye. But the majority of people go, oh my gosh, is there more? And when they do, now they could literally read 20 books because they're all interconnected and the back matter so captures them.
Was that your intention when you first started writing, is keeping it into one world? I mean, there's a lot of authors they may be like, well, I kind of get bored staying in the same world, but it sounds like you revel in it, and that's definitely your brand.
It is. I will caution some readers that you have to make different entry points, however. So what I'm saying is what I learned early on. I had my first series was 7 books. It's too many for them to feel like if they hear about someone reading book 6 and excited about it, and that person says, but wait, you have to start at book 1. That new person might feel like, well, I'm not going to read 5 books to read that one book you're excited about. So as a cautionary tale, let me tell you though, make them into bite-sized chunks, either a single book, a duet, or a trilogy, I would say is at most. Then a person can enter at book 1, read through, and then find out where else to enter. They can tell their friend about it and say, well, you could start with Hero, you could start with Captain, you could start with Reed's books, you could start with da-da-da, what are you in the mood for? And all lead to everything else, but there's varying entry points. If you get 20 books, but you literally have to start at book 1. I know an author who does that, and she's brilliant, and she's sold millions of books, and she's a KDP author as well. But it's not going to, as a rule, not going to work for everybody. So I would say definitely do that if you can. And one way to do that, an easy way, as I have done, and you asked the question, was that my intention? Yes. But like I say, there's been trial and error where I learned, okay, yes, they don't stay with you for 20 books, literally 1 through 20 sequentially. But to answer your question, when I first started writing, I wrote one couple. She has a best friend, he has a brother. The best friend and brother got together, so then I wrote a trilogy for them. And in that trilogy, in the 3rd book, they go home to meet her parents and her family. And at dinner, you meet her 4 brothers and her family. And those 4 brothers became a spin-off series where I had a book for each of the brothers and a best friend. So you can enter that series. If you only want to read about the brothers, there you go. But at the end of each of the back matter, it says, do you want to find out more about Kat? That's the woman who's in the trilogy. And when you get there, do you want to find out about her best friend? That's actually the first trilogy I ever wrote. So when I started writing, I thought, oh, how great, they'll all want to meet the friend. Oh, they'll all want to meet the brothers. And then at the end of the brothers, guess what? The youngest brother gets signed to a record label by a guy who's been appearing as a friend in several books. Now that's where I'm at. I am in the middle of this record label. There's music in every book. I'm in way over here in my universe. People start off with his book or the artist's books. But when they get to the back matter, they may find out about Dax, who's the youngest brother. Then they find out about his brothers. Then they find out about their sister. Then they go back, then they go back, then they go back.
And it's a great way to lead the reader into your back matter and make that relevant. I love the having multiple entry points. It gives readers a lot of flexibility to pick up wherever they are.
It's critical. Learn from me, please learn from me. I wound up it was quite a job, but I wound up cutting up that 7-book series into 2 trilogies and an epilogue bonus book, and then they took off and started selling like crazy. But learn from me. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about marketing or branding. With branding, do you have a very specific look? If I'm remembering correctly, you have a font that you use frequently for covers. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. It's something I also have learned. Again, learn from me, please. One thing is is it okay for me to hold up a book of mine just so I can show you what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay, this is just so I show you what I mean. I'm not trying to,
you're fine.
But you see, this is my font for my name. It's in the same placement with the same presentation every book. Every book. Pick something. It can get bigger as you get more of a name, or start out with a huge name. I don't care. I'm not trying to tell you to start out small. But my point is, always don't run around. Believe it or not, the brain is going to process that as your logo, as your trademark. And then I have many books. Again, just to show you. So you see, this was a very big, this was a very big selling book for me. You see the font there. Well, this is a breakaway book now, and this was one of the brothers I mentioned, okay? This is one of the brothers. But then this is in the music label, and you see it's the same font. Now, not all my books are this font. I actually sometimes use different fonts in the title to make a point that I'm now making a new entry point. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to visually say, this is a book 1. This is new, everybody. But it's close enough that my branding feels still like it's me. So I write romance, and a lot of you out there may not write romance. So this may not apply to you, but I have found that a lot of readers are going to buy a book based on the cover, just that alone, and then maybe they'll look at the blurb if the cover pulled them in. They're going to look at the trope in romance, meaning, is this friends to lovers? Is this enemies to lovers? Is this billionaire or something, whatever. But lastly, also, they may buy solely based on the author name if they're familiar with you. But you're not going to have as many diehards as you think. I've been doing this a long time. I've sold a lot of books. People tell me they love me and they go to the end of the earth with me. But you know what? They don't buy every single book, whether they say they do or not. And what I've learned, though, is if I can continually reinforce visually, this is more of what you love about me. It may be a different trope, it may be, but it's still me. That really sells the book. And when I venture way too far off brand in some visual way, I lose people. They forget my name. Maybe they've read 20,000 books since me, but this brings them back. Oh yeah, her. I love her. Oh yeah, I like her. So it's important to find a way to present yourself and kind of stick within that and not be too wildly crazy. I did have a book that was wildly crazy different. It was my worst seller. I recovered it, made it much more in the brand, and then it took off.
Okay.
Learn from me.
Yeah, to your point, when people search on Amazon, for example, all these books come up, and that cover is going to draw their eye. So there are people that buy based on cover.
Yeah, and to that point, one more point that's important is that the book really does need to be represented by the cover. And I feel like whatever your genre, make sure that cover is within genre, that it screams, this is what you're going to get. Like, look at this book. This was a really good seller for me. I think you can kind of get the feeling what it's going to be like, because look at his smile. He's happy. This isn't going to be an angsty book. This is going to be a happy book. Right. People knew it before even reopening it, and then it delivered what it promised. Whereas another example, just as an example, well, this one screams there's going to be a whole lot more angst. There was. So my point is you need to have your cover reflect your genre, and you need to have it reflect your book. Yes, you want a great cover that attracts people, but then if you don't deliver, these readers, they'll stop reading like at 5% if it's not what they thought it was going to be. They don't hang in there with you. So, but they will hang in there with you. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you just have to give them what they thought they were getting. It can't just be like a serial killer book and they thought it was a romance.
Right. Right. It's kind of like, when you're buying anything else, the package, if the picture on the package doesn't match what's inside, it's a disappointing customer experience.
Yeah, and you don't want that. You know, you're going to forego. There's a lot of people who have a zero desire to read a book like this, and I get it. But you don't want them as your reader. You don't want them to pick it up and then put it down 5% in. You want the people who do want to read a book like that and want to tell their friends about a book like that.
Right, right. All right, so you've got your cover and you've got your brand now. How else do you
Yeah.
draw in your new readers? What's your strategy as far as either product launch or a new launch or with your backlist? What does your marketing strategy look like?
I don't think it's all that unique, to be honest with you. The back of my book, yes, is extremely important. I can't emphasize that enough in terms of back matter, but also in terms of telling people that there is a website where they can sign up for my newsletter to find out when the next release is coming. And when they get to that website, I am unique in that it's an extremely inviting place. I do have an advantage to some readers because as a songwriter, I have all these original songs. So I've created music videos for some of those songs that are sitting on my website. I have magazine articles. I was going to show you an example of that, if that's okay. So like, for instance, on my website, here's one of the rock stars, and here's this fake magazine article that this is a fake magazine. This does not exist. These are all references to other characters, other side. This is the music mogul. Again, these are other books. It's selling. You click on this digital thing on my website, and there's literal articles from this magazine that are interviews with the characters. The point is, get creative. If you are a graphic designer mentality, go for it. Expand the world, have a bonus chapter that's there for them that can only be there on the website, and you also tease that in the back of your book if you want to see what happened this. For instance, at the end of one of my books, they got married. That was the epilogue. But if you click, you get to see them on their honeymoon, and then there's an actual song. Again, this is me, but the character is singing, and you click and you get to hear him cover her song by guitar, because I have that ability. And people go to my website, buy in droves because I promise so much extra material. They tell their friends that they can go there. And so I do get a really high retention rate of people going to my website, then they sign up for my newsletter. So to answer your question, newsletter, of course, social media, putting the word out any way that you can, that you have a new book, and keeping engaged with the people that you do capture. I call it capture, but that sounds really heartless and cold. But I mean, someone who reads your book and then you retain them to want to know you and read the next one. You can't just be an ad machine. You just can't be just a buy me, buy me, buy me machine. People in this day and age, they want to get to know you a little bit, and they want to feel like, what's your process? So even if you have a pretty small following on your newsletter or social media or whatever, keeping those people as fans and readers and caring, it grows. So it's more important, in my view, to have people who actually care, and it can be small, and grow it, than to have a whole bunch of strangers sign up to get a free something, which is another tactic, by the way. Go for it. But I have found that freebies can work, but I mean, if all you're doing is doing giveaways and freebies and collecting people that way, they don't actually care about you and your next book. So yeah, you might be able to gain numbers that way, and go for it. I'm not trying to tell you not to try everything, but I have found that it's better for me to have a smaller group of truly passionate, interested people than to have lots of numbers of people who aren't passionate and interested. Did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah. What social media sites do you use?
I can say them by name. Okay. I just don't know. I don't know. Okay, so I am on Facebook, and I have a Facebook group, and people who consider themselves true fans go there because I post a lot more pictures of my dog there than anywhere else. And I'm on Twitter, which is a little scarier for me because you can attract a lot more like negative people there. It's not as friendly a place, but I still post there occasionally and then run away. And I'm on Instagram, which is great. People love me there. And then I've recently gone into TikTok because I realized that it's an entirely different fan base over there, and that I'll be really missing the boat if I don't do it. And I have discovered that I'm a complete dork, although it's not that much of a discovery because I was a theater major undergrad, But you don't even have to be like a big, like, ha ha hoo hoo over there. You really literally can just, again, start attracting people who love books, and it's a new way for them to find you. And so
Hmm.
those are the biggies. I'm sure there's others that other people do, but that's it with the newsletter, and that keeps me pretty busy.
Hmm. So we mentioned early, I mean, this is a lot of work. There's a lot of writing. You've got the music, you're recording the music, you've got the marketing. Do you do this all yourself or do you have a team that help you?
No, I don't do it all myself. I do have a team, and I didn't start out with a team, but I quickly found out, and luckily the money was there to be able to hire people. I
Hmm.
don't have all full time. I have only one person who's full time, and she does more things for me than you would ever believe. And then I have a cover designer, I have a graphics person, I have a person who helps me with some of the social media. Um, yeah, I have a team, and they're
Okay.
amazing, and they're people I trust. And then I also have early readers, and I don't know if they're really a team. I don't like pay anybody to do any of this, but as I over the years, I've acquired people who are really passionate about my books. I mean, like uber passionate.
Yeah.
And I have over the years said to them, would you like to read an early copy? And the really early ones, and please tell me your honest opinion if this works, if this doesn't work. I don't give anybody a draft. I don't give anybody while I'm still noodling. Some authors do that. I can't do that. It cuts off my creativity and my imagination. But if I really feel like it's done, I give it to about 5 people who then read it and give me their feedback. And then it's still enough time for me to incorporate some tweaks if I need to. I think that's
So
it.
how'd you build that team? Because talking early on, we've got some authors that have joined us that are like really early days working on their first book or
Okay.
you know, what does that look like? How do you organically grow that team?
That's a really hard question because I'm just going to shoot really straight with you. There's nobody, if I were just starting out, and I mean, okay, let me think back. When I was writing my very first book for KDP, I did have several really good friends read for me. And a
Mhm.
few of them were not people who read in the genre, and their feedback was like, I think you should kill someone. And I mean, like, it's not helpful. They wanted to
Right,
turn this into everybody, and then everybody dies. And I'm like, well, it is a
right,
romance. So, and if I kill the main character, I can't make it a series. So thanks for that.
right.
So it is a little tricky. But there were a couple girlfriends who read. They don't currently still read for me. I can't ask that of them. They're not hugely voracious readers. So I guess my answer is, when you're first starting out, it's people that you trust and people who you think can give you feedback that's within the genre at least, or even if they're not within the genre, that they can ask you, what do you, this is unclear to me. I don't understand the motivation here, but take it with a grain of salt, because what you really want to do is find people who read in your genre. Then they're going to be able to give you feedback that's more attuned to what the market is going to feel about the book.
Hmm.
For me, it was just slowly but surely building that audience. Uh, and once you do have an audience of any sort, feel free to give some of those books away. You have to. You really
Hmm.
have to build an audience, and also to know that, by the way, I know it's so daunting in those early days to write that book, but you just have to finish the book, trust that you're going to get to edit it. As I mentioned, yay computers, yay friends, yay family. My dad read many of my early books. They have lots of steamy scenes, and I just said, just skip those, skim those. And he's like, I will. And he read, and and I had a neighbor. Oh, I remember now. I also have this neighbor. He didn't read, but this neighbor that worked for the Secret Service for years, like really high up in the Secret Service, and he'd since retired. And I said, there's this one element in my book I have questions about. I was there 8 hours interviewing this guy. I said, I can leave now if you want. No, no. And I took like a whole notebook of notes from him, and he would read chapters that I gave him. I didn't want to read the whole thing, but he
Right.
checked for veracity to make sure things worked. So I just kind of hodgepodged it at first, and people were so sweet. They were so nice about it.
Hmm. I think that's what I've found in talking to authors is that people want to be supportive. They want to see you succeed. It's exciting for them.
It is. I had a physical therapist character, and I talked to a friend of a friend who's a physical therapist, and I thought it'd be a 5-minute phone call. I have this one pointed question. How would you do this? And we were on the phone for an hour and a half. And I kept saying, I know you're busy. And no, this is fun. And then an emergency room doctor, same thing, didn't even know the guy. He was a friend of a friend. They are so helpful. And just, I don't know, maybe they're living vicariously through us all a little bit. People are really sweet. So use friends of friends and do your research that way, because that really is inspiring for the writing. I can't tell you how many scenes I was stuck. Oh, I wrote that firefighter I showed you. I called the local firehouse and said, I'm writing a firefighter. I want to get it right. I want to know what you would say into your walkie-talkie. I want to know what your gear would be. I want to know what you would put on first, what, everything. They go, come on down. I literally went down to the firehouse. I had a meal with them. I asked all my questions, 80 of these guys answering every question. They let me go on a ride along. Then they said, oh, and we're having training on Saturday where we burn a building with propane fake fire, and you can come and you can talk to all the cadets. I had probably 50 hours of research for that book. And to this day, I get messages from firefighters and their wives all over the country say, this book gets it right better than any book I've ever read. Every single moment is exactly right. It's because of those guys. And you know what? I wrote many scenes from that book that I never would have written if it weren't for these guys telling me their stories, giving me so much inspiration. So that's kind of far afield from what you asked, because now I'm talking about writing inspiration, but it's really the same. It's like, whether it's a reader, whether you're trying to get help with a character, with this pointed question of a scene. I remember someone in one of my books needed to be stabbed, but I wanted her to live, obviously. And again, I talked to an ER doctor and said, where can I get her stabbed? That's going to result in a lot of blood. So it seems really scary, but it's actually not that big a deal in the scheme of things. And he goes, I have the perfect place. And then what he told me led to a whole thing that I could do for another 20,000 words that I didn't know I had in me. So use people. They're usually very, very sweet.
They are. So we've got some questions coming in, and Claudia wants to know, do you ever find yourself quarreling with your characters? And if so, who wins?
I quarrel with my characters constantly, and they always win, and I should know that, so I should stop quarreling with them. Yes, I do. I remember one time I wanted my character to get into a fist fight, and he would not. And he said, that I would never do that. I would literally never do that. Nothing's worth it, and I don't have a temper. And I thought, how cool for this calm guy to finally get in a fist fight to show how passionately he feels. He just wouldn't do it. He was just too mature. And so I had to create a hot-headed best friend who is now going to be a character in his own book. And I never would have even created him had it not been for that quarrel with my character.
So Michelle has a question about, how are you getting followers on social media? Are they past fans? Are they new fans? And by the way, she says your TikTok cracks her up.
I'm scared that you've seen it. Yeah, I'm having fun on TikTok. I'm being very silly on TikTok. It's fun. Let's see. How am I getting fans from social media? Is that the question? Right?
Yeah.
Well, one thing is literally, I didn't mention this, but in every back matter, it says follow Lauren on Facebook, follow Lauren on Twitter, follow Lauren, blah, blah, blah. Every bookmark, every place on my website, every place. It's just this thing with all of the little symbols so they can click and they can follow. And then, you know what? It's just a slow grind. It's just putting out content with frequency that is true to me, that is entertaining or insightful in some way. It's a slow grind. I haven't found a quick fix. I haven't personally gone viral. I haven't suddenly overnight acquired 100,000 people. It's a slow grind. And, but like I say, those people are there for it. They're there for me. They're there for my books mostly. And they're not just there to get a giveaway. So I know giveaways are a tool. I'm not trying to put that down. I've done them. I still will do them. Mostly to reward people for hanging in there with me or to celebrate something. But I'm just saying it's not the main tool, because the idea is that people just slowly but surely get to know you and care. So I have no easy answer for you. I'm sorry. When I was very first starting out, but this was a long time ago and things have gotten a lot different, but I would do guest spots on blogs and, cross-pollinate with other authors and just show up on other people's feeds as well. And now I do newsletter swaps with other authors. We're just all trying to introduce ourselves to each other's fans. So that's another way you can do it, even if it's something small.
So how often do you post on social media? What's the frequency like? Is it every day, a couple times a day? What does that look like?
I do post every day, and every day I post personally every single day, and I respond to people personally. And then my assistant will post a photo of a stack of books or something for me. More, less personal stuff, just so we're just still showing a presence.
Right.
I do personally post though every single day. It's me for sure. And some people get really daunted by that, but you can batch create. So you don't have to be worried about it every single day. If you're sitting down to create stuff, you can create a bunch of stuff all at once and then just meet it out slowly but surely over the week.
With all these characters interrelated and then writing in this world, how do you keep track of all the characters? Do you have some sort of roadmap that you have everything written down and all the like a synopsis or character notes?
So I'm asked that question a lot, and every time I feel very embarrassed at the answer. The answer is I don't have anything. It's all right here. And I say to people, like, how like you go to a family Thanksgiving where you have your extended family or something, and you're like, you still know your cousin's name, and you know your other cousin, and you know your other cousin, and you know the gist of them. That's me. Like, these people at this point are family. They're all my cousins, they're all my brothers and sisters or my children or whatever. And I just don't forget them. I may forget some factoid and I just know where it is in the book. I literally go to the shelf, open the book, and literally read that chapter. And I do in my books have a lot of crossover chapters. So like in one book, we go to a huge party or a wedding. And in this corner of that party, XYZ is happening in this book. Then you go to a whole new book and those characters go to that same party from at a totally different time, totally different angle in their story. And they're in this corner of the same party. Then I have to go back to that first book and find out what song was playing by the band at that vital moment so that it can be the same song playing, so that, haha, as an Easter egg, we all know this is happening at the same time. Then I, in the next book, do the same exact party and haha, same song is playing. And that's my way of cueing the reader. Yes, you are clever, and it is the exact same moment. So I do that a lot. I don't have something some people call a series Bible or a big notebook.
Right.
My brain doesn't work that way. If I had it, I wouldn't consult it. I'd forget it existed. I can't tell you how many times I've written things down and then forgotten. Then seen 3 years later, I find it when I'm cleaning out my desk and go, oh, that would have been helpful if I'd remembered I'd done that for myself. So I don't bother anymore. I'm never going to look at it.
Well, definitely finding a way that works with your personality. I think that makes for a much happier working environment.
One thing I do, however, is in a book, while I'm writing, I have a notepad next to my computer. And if I need to know the timeline of events, for instance, that I know how much time has passed, that's hard for me. How much time has passed? What time of year is it? If they're visiting Chicago right now and the party was summer and that was 6 months ago, okay, well, I guess it's Christmas time. There better be snow on the ground if I'm in Chicago. So I do try to keep track of the time of year and how much time has passed in a story. And sometimes if another story is running concurrently with it, now I've got to make it winter in that book too, because that's happening at the same time as this. So I keep little notes as I go to keep myself straight during writing the book. But in terms of some sort of big series overview, unfortunately, I am not that smart.
Okay. Angela wants to know, how much is too much when describing intimacy in romance books?
It really all depends on you, on the audience you're trying to capture and the story you're trying to tell. There are books that what's called close the door or fade to black, and they don't show anything. They imply it, and there's a big audience for that. There's books like mine that are much more explicit that do not close the door. And it's really your preference. You don't have to write anything you don't want to write. And you don't
Mhm.
have to keep yourself from writing something that feels organically like something you do want to write. So I don't
Mhm.
think there is too much. I think, though, that for me, speaking only for myself, my books are extremely character driven. I have very layered, complex characters with flaws and senses of humor, and nobody is a caricature and nobody is a stick figure. I
Mhm.
personally believe that matters of the bedroom are a massive motivator for humans as much as greed and
Mhm.
other motivators, money and etc. I feel it's a primal urge. And when you get two characters together, remember I write romance, when you get two characters together who are feeling more than a platonic friendship, it's a big driving force, their chemistry, their physical chemistry, and a lot of plot and character development can happen during one of those intimate scenes. So for me, I
Mhm.
don't leave them out simply because there's so much to be told in terms of the story. I also don't put in gratuitous scenes that have nothing to do with forwarding either character development or the plot. So I've figured out my formula, but I certainly don't back away from pretty graphic explanations of things. But again, not gratuitously. I always feel like they add to explaining the fireworks going off between these two people and how this
Mhm.
has caused them to realize, oh, you are definitely not a friend.
Right. Right. We've gotten several questions about your newsletters. What kind of content do you include in the newsletter, and how often do you send it?
I usually send the newsletter once a month if I'm not in the middle of a big push for something new, keeping them
Uh-huh.
posted on things like, well, now remember they a lot of them subscribe to my newsletter because they subscribe to me. So like I recently got a new
Right.
puppy, and so I'll literally say, here's big news in my life. I don't really put a lot of my personal life in there in terms of like my children and my husband and stuff
Mhm.
like that. They're not my buddies. But something like a
Mhm.
dog, this is big. And of course, then I can use that on social media right and left too. Pictures of her growing. She's this huge, massive Bernese Mountain Dog poodle
Oh,
mix
wow.
that's
Yeah.
just fun to watch grow. She's goofy. There's all these photo opportunities. And if you're on my TikTok, you've seen I put her there too, and she's just fun. So anyway, you can find one aspect of your personal life to update people on. You can write them on, update on your writing journey. Hey, I'm so excited to let you know I finally figured out what my new book is. I'm in the middle of writing. I've just figured out the plot and the characters. There's nothing wrong with telling them I'm so excited
Mhm.
or that type of thing. And then of course, as you get closer to an actual release now, oh, and you can reveal a cover that you just came up with. You can reveal a blurb that you just wrote for it when it's time. You can always
Mhm.
just slowly unravel the little, you know, details of a book. And then, of course, when there's a release, you're telling them, hey, here's the release. Or if, let's say, you're at the point where you've selected audiobook narrators, hey, here are the audiobook narrators, blah, blah. Or let's say there's some other news, like I'm going to be on this KDP at home interview. Hey, everybody, if you want to catch me on there. So just anything happening in your career or life. And then here's the other thing, like mentioning all this social media. Let's say I do something that's really fun on social media. I can then link to that in my newsletter. Not everybody is on every bit of social media. Some people aren't on it at all. You can cross pollinate. So sometimes I'll make a post in my Facebook group that I didn't mean to be anything for the newsletter, but it turned out kind of cute and funny, and there's a big reaction. I ask a question at the end of it. What do you think? Or who's your favorite hero of mine? Or what book did you want to see next? And it gets
Mhm.
so much reaction that now I put that into my newsletter and I ask the same question. So that's the kind of stuff. I mean, people want to hear from you regularly. It feels like you're invading their inbox, I know, but you are if you're spamming them with far too much and you don't have anything to say. But keeping up
Mhm.
with them and letting them know that you're still there and you're working hard and you're a human and there's still
Right.
stuff to follow about you is a good thing. And the newsletter does go out with more frequency as it's closer to a release because I have more information to tell. And I don't have a lot of people dumping it. I can see if people unsubscribe and they don't. So I don't think that I'm bugging them. They want to know. They signed up because they want to know.
Right. Right. Um, we have a question. Do you write in the same tense and POV in every book?
That's a great question. And, this is a very personal choice, and I don't think there's any rules. And that's another wonderful thing about KDP and self publishing. There really are no rules. You can do whatever you want. I've seen people shift POV literally within one book. One chapter's first, present first, and another one is third or whatever. I can't do that. I am every book. Now, remember, I was a theater person and I wrote screenplays and plays, but screenplays. And so for me, present tense feels immediate. Present tense feels like it's happening right now. And I love first person simply because I can be so conversational in first person.
Right.
So yes, I can write everything in first person and everything is present tense. That doesn't mean that you can't have a flashback. You can't say, I remember when he told me this, or when I first came to this place. I remember the time we were at the lake and I fell overboard on the canoe. That has never happened in a single one of my books. I don't know why I pulled that ridiculous thing out, but you can do past tense within a chapter as a memory. But all of my books are first person, present tense, and I'm not telling you have to do that, but it works for me. And then that's kind of what my readers are going to expect, whether they know it or not. A Lauren Rowe book has certain identifying characteristics, and that's one of them.
What are some of the other identifying characteristics that you find you put into all your books?
Well, I'm told all the time that the minute someone starts reading my book, they're like, here she is again. So what I've done is I've managed to write the way that I speak mostly. I'm able to write the way that I think, the way that my personality is. It's not muted. I've learned that what makes me weird is my strength. What makes me different is my strength. I am not normal. I am not what everybody else sounds like. And therefore, I do lose some people right away. They open the book and they go, what is this? And they close the book. But that's okay. I can't cater to everybody. People who want a little bit of quirkiness. So to answer your question, every single one of my books is funny. Every single one. Now on this, okay, I grant you I haven't been exactly hilarious. This isn't a stand-up forum. But I am a relatively humorous human, I have learned in my interactions with human beings. So I don't try to mute humor. And what I find is that I'm not forcing humor. So to answer your question, every book is going to have humor in it because I personally think humor is part of the human condition. And I think, have you ever been literally at a funeral and you're crying, and in the eulogy, someone tells a funny story and you're crying and laughing at the same time? And to me, that encapsulates the human experience. We laugh and cry at the same time or within seconds apart. No need to try to change that. Let's just make it real. So everybody's funny. Everything has moments of real heart, real feeling. And the other thing that kind of, I think, makes my books unique is just the depth to which you get to know these characters. You really, I don't think it would work for every reader, but I don't like rush through and get to the beats of the book. And it's not about like an incredible plot. I mean, I do give you a plot for sure, but it's not about necessarily, in my genre, all the twists and turns. And woo, there are some with twists and turns. The point though is you care so much about these characters that even then just sitting there talking, you get butterflies in your stomach along with them. And that's enough to propel you to want to turn the pages as if it's a page turner, just because you care so much about these people. So that's kind of my earmark, is giving you characters that you actually really, really do care about.
Isabella wants to know, how do you structure your time, your day, your week, your month, your year? Do you set writing goals as far as how many books you're going to release? What does that look like?
I'm a very lucky person in that I have been a professional full-time writer for a long time now. And the thing I've learned, so I haven't had to juggle. I did have to juggle. I mentioned that I wrote a memoir as my very first book, and I did that when I put my babies to sleep, and then I would start at like 10 at night and we write until like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was always sleep deprived, and I had a day job. I remember those days. So to answer the question is, like, I did have to find time in the beginning. Now I get up, I take my big old puppy for a walk, get my juices flowing, come back, have a nice cup of coffee, sit down, and I write. And I don't have a word requirement. I know a lot of authors are very successful writing a certain number of words per day. I do not believe that works for me. I just feel too tied down. Some days I write an amazing amount of words, and other days I don't write at all, but I tell myself that I'm going to think about it, and I do. I take a walk or a run, and I think. My day looks very nebulous. I do have an idea of the books I'm going to, I start the year, I speak with my assistant, we talk about the schedule. I do have audiobook narrators that I have to give them a deadline of when I'm going to give them the book. So I do have to make commitments. I do put books on pre-order, so I have to make commitments about release days. But again, this is KDP, so it's all within my control. And I do want to say this to people out there. You know, a lot of writers I know are extremely stressed, and they say they're on deadline and they're just so stressed out. And I'm like, well, but you know, you're your own boss. Your boss is really nice, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, it's one thing to push yourself to be productive. It's one thing to push yourself because you know you want to finish the book, which is really, really important. Just finish the book. You can edit the book. Put that sand into your sandbox and make your sandcastle later. But you also don't want to create deadlines and release schedules and ideas that are unrealistic or take the pleasure out of it for you and make you just a ball of nerves and stress. Writing is a release. Writing is a beautiful thing. It's your soul is like vibrating, you know? It's supposed to be beautiful. And it's hard too. Anything hard, beautiful things can be hard things. They're not mutually exclusive. But I just mean, don't put so much pressure on yourself that you make it like awful.
Right.
It can't be perpetually awful. Or that's no fun. And I mean, like, not every day of being a writer is fun for me. Don't get me wrong. Some days are just hard. But I appreciate the hard because then I get to the finish line and I feel like I've accomplished something special. It's not really answering the question directly. I guess I'm just saying I'm the one of the least structured writers I know. I know other very big authors, much bigger than me, that do the same as me. They just say I write when I'm inspired, and I do push through on some hard days, but mostly I want to just enjoy my life and enjoy my career and be happy. And that's me.
All right, we have time for one more question. You mentioned your audiobook narrators. Do you release your audiobook, your digital book, and your print book at the same time?
I do, which means that sometimes, a lot of times, you know, the book is ready months before, and I don't just press publish when I really would love to. But for me, I have found that a simultaneous release of an ebook, an audiobook, and a paperback all at once, I'm putting so much effort and time and money into marketing that I want to have that wave reach every format. And for me, audiobook has been extremely lucrative. And sometimes I make more money in audiobook than I make in ebook in a given month. And it's crazy. So I don't want to bypass letting all of that marketing hit audiobook readers. And now I'm kind of known for my audiobooks. I have a lot of fans that only read me through audiobook, and I don't want to miss out on those readers.
Now, some authors narrate their own audiobooks, and I know that you do narrate some audiobooks. Do you narrate your own?
Not anymore for now. When I first started out, I wrote that cancer memoir, and I am a performer. I've been in a band. I'm a songwriter. And that book had a lot of songs in it of my own that I sing, that I had released on an album. And it was purchased by an audiobook publisher, and they said, well, why don't you come try to narrate? We know you have a theater degree. We know you have this performance experience. Why don't you come try? We'll set aside a week. I said, I'll try. And I came in and did it in 2 days, which was the amount of time a pro would do it. And they said, you have a knack for this. You should make a reel and do audiobook narration for other authors too, if you want. I went, I want. So this was before I wrote my first Lauren Rowe book, and I made a reel, and I got hired like right and left. So I became a professional audiobook narrator. That led me to reading in my genre, you see, and that's what made me go, oh, I think I can write this, and I want to be Lauren Rowe, and I have an idea for a book. Well, of course, being a professional audiobook narrator, I narrated those first books, and I put them and I released them. So my very first Lauren Rowe book, before I had a following at all, had an audiobook component. To my shock and thrill, that book hit USA Today. The audiobook made me googles of money, and I went, I'm always doing audiobook from there. So I was really off and running right away. So yes, I narrated many, many of my own books until I realized, and this is what I want to now teach and tell, is that I realized that I already had people reading Lauren Rowe books who loved Lauren Rowe, but there were narrators who had their own audiences, And why am I missing out on those audiences who don't know Lauren Rowe, but do know this narrator? So that's when I started hiring narrators to narrate my books, because then I can capture that narrator's audience as well as the author. And I have a lot of people who write to me and say, Lauren, I missed when you did your own narrations. Are you going to do those again? And I think to myself, not anytime soon, because the new narrations with new narrators, honestly, make 3 times as much as my own narrations ever made. Again, because it's new, two new, I have a male and a female character. That's this person's audience, plus my audience. That's 3 times the amount of money. And I mean, I'm not hugely money driven in terms of I write what I want, what I love. I want to feel good about what I write. So there's a ceiling to the amount of chasing money I'm willing to do. But man, I'm not going to leave money on the table either, people. That's for sure. So the answer is I used to do it, and I think it's a valid thing. But if you're thinking of doing it, just know that there is an art to it, and a bad quality narration will do more harm than good. So I would definitely maybe make sure it's good if you're going to do it. Go for it, but make sure it's a good product, or else you're going to get bashed and people are going to say, stay in your lane, author. Don't, you should have hired a pro. People are not going to say, good for you for trying. They won't. They're not nice if they don't like the audiobook.
They will definitely give you a lot of feedback.
Yes, we'll leave it at that. They will give you a lot of feedback.
Well, we're over time, but I'll tell you what, I could sit here and talk to you all day. This has been a blast. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry we're over time. I don't have any time in front of me. This has been incredible, and I am so grateful and honored that you asked me, and I hope anybody out there this has helped your journey even the tiniest bit. It's a pleasure, and I wish you all a lovely day.
Do you want to share your handles for social media with the audience so that they can come check you out on any of the social media channels?
Sure. It's at Lauren Rowe Books. Literally everywhere, all the same. It's another tip. Make it easy. Make it always the same. At Lauren Rowe Books. And I want to show you guys, this is my newest book, and I'm telling you this because look, I went with a different look because I'm telling you this is different, but look, see that? And this one has so much music in it. So I do recommend you go to my website to see what I mean. Guess what my website is? Guess. Lauren Rowe Books. Yeah. So I just want to reemphasize, like, find your lane, and you can vary within that lane, but kind of try to deliver you in every book, and it'll work. You'll get that following, I promise.
And as always, happy publishing, everyone.